Most people picture toxic workplaces as loud. They imagine yelling managers, public blow-ups, or obvious dysfunction that's hard to ignore. But in reality, the most damaging workplaces are often much quieter than that. Usually, everything still looks normal on the surface. People still show up, work still gets done, and meetings stay on the calendar. Yet over time, productivity declines, stress stays elevated, and turnover slowly increases. When that happens, people usually start looking for explanations. They blame personalities, leadership styles, attitudes, but those explanations rarely tell the full story. So, today, we're looking at what actually makes a workplace toxic, according to workplace research. Because without a clear definition, it's easy to mistake a demanding environment for a toxic one, or to miss toxicity entirely when it doesn't look dramatic. In organizational psychology, toxicity isn't defined by how a workplace feels on a given day. It's defined by how the system responds to behavior over time. So instead of starting with personalities or moods, we'll start with a working definition. A toxic workplace is an environment where normal, healthy work behavior is consistently punished or made unsafe, while dysfunctional behavior is tolerated or even rewarded. That definition matters because it shifts the focus away from individual traits and toward the system itself. And it gives us something observable to work with. The first condition shows up when expectations are unclear, and accountability only appears after something goes wrong. People aren't quite sure what good performance actually looks like until they miss the mark. Priorities shift without warning, and feedback arrives late, in the form of correction rather than guidance. Psychologists often refer to this pattern as role ambiguity, a situation where people don't have a clear, stable understanding of what's expected of them. Decades of research show that when expectations are unclear, stress increases, and errors become more likely. Engagement drops because effort starts to feel misdirected. On its own, that's a job design problem. It becomes a toxic condition when people are blamed, corrected, or penalized for missing expectations that were never made clear in the first place. A useful way to assess this is to ask whether good performance can be clearly explained before the work begins. When it can't, and accountability still shows up later, the issue usually isn't motivation or skill. It's the structure of the role, and how the system responds to failure. The second condition shows up when normal work behaviors begin to carry personal risk. When behaviors like asking clarifying questions, raising concerns early, or offering respectful disagreement are met with negative consequences. Whether subtle or explicit, people start to adjust how they operate. Over time, people learn that staying silent is safer than being accurate. You can usually see this in two ways. Either no one speaks up at all, or when someone does, it quietly works against them instead of protecting the work. When silence feels safer than honesty, the environment isn't just stressful, it's unsafe. And when that pattern isn't addressed early, it's exactly how a workplace becomes toxic over time. The third condition involves inconsistency in how rules and standards are applied. The same behavior can lead to very different outcomes depending on who engages in it. Some people are protected, while others are corrected. Problematic behavior may be tolerated if the person is perceived as valuable. Research on organizational justice shows that perceived unfairness erodes trust faster than workload or pressure ever could. When power is applied inconsistently, formal standards stop feeling reliable. People begin paying attention to informal cues like who's protected, who isn't, and what actually leads to consequences. Over time, work stops being guided by shared rules and starts being shaped by uncertainty and self-protection. When that pattern persists, the environment doesn't just feel unfair, it becomes toxic. The fourth condition has to do with what happens when harmful issues don't get resolved. Some problems are unavoidable in any workplace. What matters is whether harmful patterns are addressed or quietly allowed to continue. One difficult incident doesn't define a workplace. High stress alone doesn't make a workplace toxic. Neither do busy seasons, demanding projects, or periods of instability like layoffs. A workplace becomes toxic when the same problems persist long enough that people stop trying to address them. When issues are acknowledged but never resolved, and when dysfunction becomes normalized, the environment quietly shifts from difficult to damaging. When issues are acknowledged but never resolved, people adapt by lowering expectations, disengaging from solutions, and focusing on getting through the day. Over time, that dysfunction becomes normal. And when that happens, the environment isn't just difficult, it's toxic. Important distinction. A workplace can be demanding without being toxic. Toxicity emerges when pressure is paired with a loss of control, safety, or fairness, and when those conditions persist without being addressed. That distinction matters because it helps separate challenging work from unhealthy systems. If you're recognizing these patterns, the next step isn't panic, it's clarity. Knowing what kind of system you're in helps you decide how to respond and what not to internalize. On this channel, we break down workplace dynamics using psychology, not opinion or hustle culture. If that approach is useful to you, you're in the right place. Subscribe to Uncommon Sense Lab for more grounded workplace psychology.